WWE before becoming their biggest star. Let's see what they're doing. I gotta say, Vince McMahon, thank you for pushing Roman Reigns. If he didn't push Roman Reigns as much as he did, Roman Reigns might be another like Alex Riley or I don't know, something like that. Something like that. Have potential like a show off of sorts. No pun intended.
And that's just something I don't understand because the tribal chief don't lose.
Roman Reigns is the undisputed number one star of this generation. There is nobody who WWE has invested more time and consequences into, and even if you argue that someone like Seth Rollins is in number two, the gap between them is quite big. For over 3 years now, we've seen Roman Reigns portray one of the more over characters in modern WWE history, cement his name as one of the all-time great villains, and arguably even above some of them that you may think of that come into that conversation. This period has been such a smashing success that many fans forgot about the disastrous 5 or 6 years that led up to him becoming the most popular star now in WWE. Let's take a look at the first time Roman Reigns tried to be the main event guy and fell quite a bit short, or at least in the eyes of some he did. We'll get into the nitty-gritty here. It's Sportskeeda Wrestling. I'm Kevin. Let us know what you think in the comments below. All the way back in his early days in pro wrestling in WWE NXT, coming under the Anawahi wrestling family legacy, Jim Ross described Roman Reigns as being a guy who had the it factor. But he probably wouldn't have expected it to take nearly a decade to really come together. During his days with The Shield, remember the most breakout faction of all time? Roman didn't talk that much, played the cool hand Luke Muscle type role, and it was the perfect role for him to be the powerhouse. They clearly played up his strengths because he wasn't really a defined talking personality in WWE at the time. It was always talked about that WWE had plans to push Roman Reigns as the breakout star of The Shield, based on what CM Punk has gone on the record about when he had to take on the entire faction in a handicap match on pay-per-view to, quote, make Roman look really strong during their encounters. He had a strong performance at the Survivor Series in 2000 to make him the guy outside of The Shield. He broke Kane's 13-year-old elimination record in the Rumble match, taking a whopping 12 superstars over the top rope, falling short of eliminating the winner of the match, Batista. In the year that followed, WWE continued to push Roman as the next guy, the perfect candidate to win the 2015 Royal Rumble. But fans simply weren't buying it. And maybe WWE, or some people within the company, didn't realize how wrong they were about putting him on that pedestal and saying, hey, this is the next guy. Jumping back into that Shield breakup period, Seth Rollins was the one who immediately benefited from joining the Authority faction, becoming the Golden Boy. In reality, Roman Reigns was the company's Golden Boy, and that became an increasingly apparent thing over the summer of 2014. Brock Lesnar would defeat John Cena to win his first WWE Championship in over a decade, and some fans quickly spotted that the plan was going to be the new Golden Boy, Roman Reigns, against the Golden Beast in Brock Lesnar. To complicate these problems even further, Roman Reigns was out of action due to a hernia and had to take the rest of the year off, but was still named the Superstar of the Year anyway. While Rollins was making his name and almost kind of being this generation's Edge in a way, Dean Ambrose broke from the faction and was organically getting over on his own. So where was Roman Reigns outside of The Shield? Even though he was getting the biggest spotlight of the year, some people say it just wasn't connecting with all of the fans, specifically the dudes. The ladies and the kids showed up for the big dog. That's right, they called him the big dog then. But the fellas like me were like, I don't like this guy. The only problem was that WWE officials seemed to think that by making him, Roman Reigns, John Cena's successor, that he had to be exactly like John Cena, be booked the exact same way, wrestle the same pace of matches, and the almost exact same thing, and they were wrong to go with that route. The perfect example of this was the horrible Sufferin' Succotash promo that someone had to write for Roman Reigns, and it's been mocked and repeated for years. It's become a meme within wrestling circles in its own right.
while you were busy doing suffering succotash.
Remember that Royal Rumble issue we mentioned earlier? Yeah, that was a Royal Rumble where the fans were going with Daniel Bryan and WWE went with someone else. In 2015, the fans thought it was time for sure that WWE wouldn't make the same mistake again, and finally Daniel Bryan would get his Royal Rumble win and be rocketed back into WrestleMania greatness. Instead, he lasted a whopping 10 minutes before he was eliminated. And the crowd in Philadelphia, a crowd that is known for turning on things. Yes, this is a city that once threw snowballs at Santa Claus at a football game. Yeah, they caused an uproar because they knew WWE was going with Roman Reigns in this match. And they weren't having it, and it blew them, and they did. Even when The Rock made a surprise return to help him, they weren't buying it. The expression on the Great One's face when he endorsed Roman Reigns showed how awkward this experience was. This was the start of the shoving Roman Reigns down your throat era. Is that an era? And the dreaded period in WWE history played out. There were great matches, but the storylines just lacked the connection emotionally with the audience, at least in some circles. Since Daniel Bryan was a clear fan favorite, WWE thought having Roman Reigns beat him clean in the main event of the Fastlane show before Mania would earn him the respect. It didn't. It just didn't. In an attempt to make Roman Reigns the next guy, they were going to cement him here at the biggest show of the year. He got the role to take on WWE World Heavyweight Champion Brock Lesnar in the main event of WrestleMania 31. In an attempt to deal with the circumstances that WWE was in with the 50-50 responses to Roman Reigns, they went with the cash-in of all cash-ins, the Money in the Bank cash-in of Seth Rollins, who stole the championship glory from his former faction member Roman Reigns, and of course Brock Lesnar. For fans, this was a big relief, specifically fans who just weren't buying into Roman Reigns. And for WWE's high brass, it seemed like it was only a small setback in their plans overall. Rollins would continue to carry WWE on his shoulders with that world title before his knee injury came up and really derailed his run there. This forced Rollins to vacate the championship, and since they were already building Roman Reigns back up organically, or at least trying to this time, he was put in the driver's seat and won the title at the Survivor Series tournament. Yeah, this was the first time in his career, and he beat Dean Ambrose to do it, who was by far a little bit more popular. His moment was quickly taken away by Sheamus, who, once again, cashed in the Money in the Bank contract on him to kickstart a feud against Roman Reigns. Although his run only lasted 22 days, it surprisingly led to Roman Reigns getting cheered when he won the WWE Championship in Philadelphia. Yeah, that same place that booed him at the Rumble. Let's add a little bit more context here. Mr. McMahon decided to end his hiatus from being on television for quite some time and personally return to feud with Roman and try to turn him into another Stone Cold or anti-authority figure. In hindsight, it seemed like even McMahon was unaware of what it was that they wanted out of Roman Reigns, the exact dialed-in thing. It led to temporarily having a band-aid placed on Roman Reigns' situation, and once the year began in 2016, the crowd quickly turned on the future tribal chief. And that's right, he's not the tribal chief yet. For one, Mr. McMahon announced for the second time in history the WWE Championship would be on the line in the Royal Rumble, making it the first time this had been done since 1992. In that instance, the title was vacant, but this was the first time a champion with Reigns was the central figure of it all, and all the hype about his unique match solely revolved around one man. Once again, Dean Ambrose was the sentimental favorite and the chosen one by the fans. But it didn't matter because he wasn't chosen by the office. Triple H, yes, who was very much an authority figure in WWE at the time, would make his return as the last entrant and eliminate Roman Reigns along with Dean Ambrose to become a 14-time world champion. He would be the villain, Roman Reigns would be the hero, heading into WrestleMania 32. And marching through all of that, a triple threat main event was booked for Fastlane, where Brock Lesnar would face Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns in a triple threat to determine the game's opponent for WrestleMania 32. But we all knew where this was going, right? WWE fans made it clear that it was Dean Ambrose who they were behind, and they felt he deserved the main event, which is why it was so underwhelming when he ate a pinfall at the hands of Roman Reigns. Another main event with Roman Reigns, another main event that fans were weary of. At least, the dudes like me. It wasn't Roman Reigns' fault at all, but the forced push he was receiving had completely opposite effects than that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Of what WWE had really desired. Looking back at it, this was a pretty infuriating time. In front of the biggest crowd that WWE had ever pulled in history, that's right, they're still WWE, there would be no change of plans. Roman Reigns would get his coronation, whether anybody liked it or not, and it was a match that simply couldn't follow other matches on the card. It was good, but the story just, once again, wasn't connecting like you think it should. So what was WWE's solution to get around nearly 100,000 people turning on Roman Reigns winning the title? Well, some internet sleuths have accused but cannot confirm that WWE manipulated the audio on the broadcast, and we can't confirm that for you either. It's just a thing that people put out there. It was quickly noticed, but admittedly, the post-WrestleMania 32 time was one of the better times while WWE television was rated PG. Roman Reigns became a 3-time world champion in just the span of a few months, and had really strong performances in back-to-back classics with AJ Styles, which were very underrated. By this point, Rollins was ready to return, and given that he was sorely missed and was cheered more than anybody else, surely WWE would turn him babyface. You know, distance makes the Seth Rollins grow fonder, right? Wrong. They kept him as a villain and set up the story where he would pursue the title that he never lost, the WWE World Championship. That makes sense. In what was a rather surprising move, though, Rollins defeated Roman Reigns clean to become the next WWE champion. Only this time, the moment was ironically ruined by a Money in the Bank cash-in, this time from their Shield brother, Dean Ambrose. Roman Reigns' title loss was actually prompted by a failed drug test, violating the company's 30-day wellness policy and leading to a shocking 30-day suspension. Roman Reigns has argued that this was simply an issue with medication that came up wrong on a drug test. It was a big deal at the time, and WWE decided to once again keep him a bit on the down low for a few months. Bad timing. Roman Reigns, being called the Big Dog, was drafted to Raw to begin a challenge for the Universal Championship that was introduced around this time, and fell short against Kevin Owens multiple times due to all that outside interference. But by the 2017 Royal Rumble, after losing to KO again, he would make one of the most hated, despised, and argued moves yet. In just a little context, the 2017 Rumble had a number 30 spot that people had huge expectations for. What? The Royal Rumble? People have unreasonable expectations for it? Some people expected a Samoa Joe to make his debut, while some thought Kenny Omega's going to come over, yeah. Or maybe The Rock's going to come back. Please fulfill our widespread fantasy booking. So imagine the reaction when over 50,000 people saw that it was Roman Reigns who entered at number 30. Yeah, they didn't like it. It sucked the entire energy out of the arena, and Reigns was essentially used as a scapegoat to be a run him to get Randy Orton cheered. Imagine the situation. He was being used to get circumstantial heat on the eventual Rumble, but what he did at the 2017 Rumble was eliminate The Undertaker and set up a WrestleMania clash against him, where the only point of the story was the two men were going to prove whose yard it was. That's right. Get off my lawn and get out of my yard, and we're going to fight at WrestleMania. Rumors came together that Roman Reigns versus the Surely enough, that is how it played out. Roman Reigns became the second man to defeat the Taker at Mania, and the end of the show was meant to be a clear-cut farewell for the Phenom, or at least we thought so at the time. It was a hard-to-watch match. Undertaker had some physical issues and would later return that year to squash John Cena in less than 3 minutes at the next year's WrestleMania. But as for Roman Reigns, he received an insurmountable level of heat. Anything at all, apart from him repeatedly saying that I'm not a bad guy, I'm a good guy, I'm just the guy. Yeah, he was literally playing up the perception around him being the guy put on the pedestal. He spent the rest of the year in important storylines and failed to win to have a blockbuster Roman Reigns versus Lesnar match at WrestleMania 34 as the main event, attempting yet another coronation. Roman Reigns had a feud against John Cena in the summer of that year. Here we go, they're going to make Cena make Reigns into the next Cena. It was a pretty good match they had, and the build to it, though, kind of had some issues. Yeah, with, John Cena calling out Roman Reigns for not remembering certain lines in his promo.
Oh, wait.
That didn't mean that he was going to lose to Cena, and at No Mercy, the match was supposed to be a passing of the torch moment, and it just didn't completely hit the mark. There was a brief Shield reunion that protected him from getting booed, but he was ultimately replaced by Kurt Angle in their first match back together, which was a bit of a bummer, but hey, at least he got to have that sight of Kurt Angle in a bulletproof vest. One of the big fundamental issues was that while Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose broke out and created their own characters away from the Shield, Roman Reigns was still much being treated as a one-man Shield. He still had a modified version of the song, he came out wearing the bulletproof vest. It was just not a fresh take. Once again, we find ourselves at the Royal Rumble. Roman Reigns was put in that runner-up heat spot, and this time it was against Shinsuke Nakamura, who, with WWE once again playing on the crowd's 50-50 hatred of Roman Reigns and simultaneously pushing a babyface. But it wasn't Roman Reigns. It obviously didn't stop him from headlining his fourth WrestleMania in a row, and this one was a blockbuster clash with Lesnar that we told you about, and it was just a flop. This was maybe one of the more underwhelming WrestleMania main events in quite some time, even with Reigns bleeding at a time when people thought WWE wasn't going to use blood. Lesnar made his way backstage and felt so mad that he threw the championship in the direction of Vince McMahon. By the way, Lesnar won that match. Reigns would eventually beat Brock Lesnar 4 months later in the main event of SummerSlam, but this time it was cut short due to his sudden and unfortunate announcement that he was battling leukemia for the second time in his life, with most people not even aware that he had battled it before his wrestling career. This was undoubtedly the biggest turning point in his career and the perception of Roman Reigns. The announcement was shocking enough that virtually every fan was grounded. For all those years of just pent-up anger at someone portraying a pro wrestling character we didn't like, it all vanished, and you worried about a guy named Joe Anoa'i, a family man, and the risks he was taking with his body as a wrestler now paled in comparison to the fight he would have to defeat leukemia for the second time in his life. It didn't even matter what the storylines were. This is about the well-being of a person. It was a humbling moment for any fans who were just booing this guy and just living in the cycle of internet hatred and how come they don't push the wrestlers we like. The fact that he was going through the battle made him likable and relatable. As sad and ironic it may sound, that single announcement did more to make fans like him than they did in the 5 years of pushing him in storylines and scripted performances. And that's just circumstantial. Thankfully, it only took 3 months for him to return to Monday Night Raw, and the announcement that he was in remission received a standing ovation. Reigns had a fairly mild return to the ring, reuniting with the Shield a few more times and facing Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania 35, ending his streak of consecutive WrestleMania main events. After Mania, the Shield's story together finally ended with Dean Ambrose leaving WWE for his new home in All Elite Wrestling. While Reigns' year in 2019 was quite unremarkable in terms of storylines, it even saw the god-awful dog food moment with King Corbin. Yeah, they poured dog food on him. Even when he wasn't getting the heat, he was once again used as the runner-up guy at the 2020 Royal Rumble as Drew McIntyre threw him out of the ring to win his first Rumble and secure his spot at WrestleMania. It looked like the tides were turning and Roman Reigns maybe wasn't going to be the guy until he stepped up to the newly crowned Universal Champion Goldberg at WrestleMania 36. And that ended up being canceled with the entire pandemic times that we were thrown into, and Roman Reigns pulled out of WrestleMania and WWE altogether. This was an abrupt end. The last big bark of the big dog wasn't that big at all. And as things were during those pandemic times, everyone kind of recalculated their lives, and WWE recalculated some things with Roman Reigns. Reportedly, Reigns put his foot down to WWE and Vince McMahon, and he and Paul Heyman pitched an entirely new character, a new him, as still one of the pivotal players in WWE. They would pitch the Tribal Chief. And reportedly, once again reportedly, if McMahon didn't give his stamp of approval on this new direction, Reigns could have very possibly left WWE altogether. And over the next 3 years, we've seen him finally transform into the character that connected and was destined to be this entire time. A wrestling incarnation of a Darth Vader villain. A villain so bad that they think they're good the entire time. Hubris incarnate. Someone who truly believes they're entitled to everything they've manipulated their way into being. It's a captivating character, and all of the storylines with him have truly proven that he is also one of the more dynamic character performers. I mean, think of the amount of compelling things that he has said on a microphone in the past few years, outside of just the matches. A mixed direction babyface hero who turns into a villain organically and gets himself over is a tried and tested formula that has nearly worked almost every time with the right performers, especially top tier stars like, say, I don't know, The Rock. Yeah, he did this in reverse and became a fan favorite. It should be said that despite the incredibly painful 4 or 5 years Roman Reigns had under the big dog, it wasn't his fault. It was simply the role. How different the landscape of WWE would be if he never became the big dog. He never got to be the tribal chief. It's all a part of the journey. What did you think of the big dog years of Roman Reigns? What do you think of the tribal chief now? Let us know in the comments below.
Alright. Thank y'all for watching. I'm gonna see you on the next one. Great video.